live on your tablet, phone, and the KUTV app. This is 2 News Live.
Thanks for joining us on 2 News Live, Wednesday, June 28th. I'm Brian Cheney. Thanks for being with us here on the program. We're going to dive into a couple different topics tonight. Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson sharing a personal story that many of us have heard from time and time again about one of her own family members who was a victim of domestic violence. She was very proud of the accomplishments today because they were rolling out and starting to roll out lethality assessment protocols. Amanda Gilbert will join us in just a moment to weigh in on some of that and look at what this means moving forward. Also, it is fireworks season. There is a genuine concern as we start to dry out. Lincoln Graves will be with us in just a few minutes. But before we get there, let's take a look at some of our headlines. You can see these right now on our website, KUTV.com. The Utah child book author accused of killing her husband is now being sued by her husband's estate. Eric Richins and his family filing a lawsuit against Corey Richins after they allege she stole money from her husband and orchestrated his death to profit from it. Also in our headlines tonight, a Utah family's dog is recovering after getting bitten by a rattlesnake, but the dog's owner saying it's hard to tell what that snake was and if it was even dangerous initially because it was so small. Officials say this offers an important reminder and warning to other dog owners to keep your pets safe. Also in our headlines tonight, UHP troopers sounding the alarm about a rise in people driving under the influence. During the first half of last year, troopers say they busted more than 10,400 people for DUI. This year's numbers have gone up by about 300. And finally, in your headlines tonight, next month, a new program opens up to help first-time buyers in Utah purchase a new home. The program that will give up to $20,000 to qualified first-time buyers could be welcome for so many. As we go in depth tonight, you can always get in touch with us throughout the show. Use the hashtag 2NewsLive to join our conversation. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all of those platforms to weigh in.
But this was our first family reunion that we had without my cousin, Mandy Main, who was murdered last August by her ex-husband, who waited for her in the dark, early morning hours of August 17th and ambushed her while she was at the bus stop waiting for the bus to go to work. And he shot her multiple times and then took his own life.
Well, a very heavy subject here on 2 News Live, something that many people unfortunately can relate to, some sort of domestic violence. Heart-wrenching to hear Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson speaking about her own family member who was killed as a result of a domestic violence situation. She recounted that story earlier today, but also celebrated some change. She led the charge on a bill that will require law enforcement in Utah to use a lethality assessment protocol. Many law enforcement agencies already using this protocol or a form of it. Amanda Gilbert was there this morning as the Lieutenant Governor spoke. Amanda, what did she say to you? I know you're joining us live in Taylorsville tonight, which is near the area of where that incident took place a few years ago, about a year ago now.
That's right, Brian. Behind me here in Taylorsville, there's actually a bus stop. It's a little hard to see, but this is the area where that Lieutenant Governor's cousin, as you just heard, was shot and killed by her ex-husband. It happened in August of last year in the early morning hours. It's one of the tragedies that really inspired this bill turned to a law which will require officers to take this lethality assessment when they're in a situation involving domestic violence. They'll have to do this assessment on scene. It's basically 11 questions that they'll have to ask victims and survivors, and then they'll use those 11 questions to determine if those victims are in a potentially lethal or deadly situation.
So Amanda, what's next for law enforcement agencies who don't have this protocol in place?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. So right now, a number of agencies have been kind of piloting this lethality assessment, but then coming July 1st, they will be required to use it. So this summer, they're rolling out a mobile app that law enforcement will be able to use for the lethality assessment. And what's great about that mobile app when it comes this summer is that officers will be able to share information together so they can kind of look up repeat offenders, see people's past history, to try to stop tragedies like Mandy's from happening again. It's because of a law which is actually named after her, Mandy's Law. Back to you, Brian.
Amanda Gilbert live for us in Taylorsville this evening. Amanda, as always, thank you for joining us. So here's more from Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson earlier today.
We worked really hard to assess the root of the problem because I knew that this was not just my family's problem. This was not just Mandy Main that had her life taken. There were a lot of people who've had their lives taken because of this type of situation. A lot of families that were affected. And looking through what the gaps were in our system and how we could close those gaps was, I want to say it was a long process, but looking back, it's actually, we've done this really quickly. And I want to thank Commissioner Anderson and his leadership and his team, and Jen Campbell and her leadership and her team. There are so many people who've been working for a long, long time in this space to save lives, to make sure that victims of intimate partner violence have the resources that they need. And now we have made huge steps toward ensuring that. What we did was require lethality assessments to be conducted. A lot of law enforcement agencies were already doing this, but there was no system, no database, no way to connect all of the dots in an easy way. Law enforcement would go to a scene and maybe that particular scene didn't look like that big of a deal. But you provide more information, you connect some dots, and maybe it is a bigger deal than it appears on the surface, and there are different decisions that law enforcement would make in those moments. That's what Senate Bill 117 has done. It's created a way for law enforcement to get more information when they perform those lethality assessments. It also provided funding so that our domestic violence service providers could actually be there, be able to provide the services that are needed in the moment.
Well, if you or someone you know is in a domestic and dangerous situation, needs your help, and needs other help, you can always call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 800-799-7233, or here in Utah, the Domestic Violence Coalition, you can call day or night, 800-897-5465. Going in depth now on fireworks. It's not legal to be setting off fireworks in Utah right now, but that is not stopping people. Just today, Draper fire crews responded to a pretty small brush fire they believe started from fireworks, perhaps left over in that area. Perhaps they traveled down that hillside. So there's an enforcement process on these firework complaints, but when does it begin? It's a good question. Lincoln Graves joining us live here. Lincoln, I know you were in a different part of the valley now, joining us obviously in the confines of the vehicle right now, but what did law enforcement officers tell you about enforcing the illegal fireworks that are truly illegal right now?
Yeah, so it really depends on where you are, Brian, what city or town you live in. And first I want to say that officers, they kind of focused on three main areas. One, people who put off fireworks in restricted areas, like let's say this is in the foothills. They don't want things starting wildfires in the foothill areas. So that's one instance. Two, the illegal fireworks you mentioned, that's certainly an issue, but ever since Utah did start to allow some aerial fireworks, that's not so much of an issue. And then the third one is setting off fireworks outside those times when it's allowed. So basically it's 2 days before and 1 day after the July 4th and July 24th holidays. Now, officers, police officers, and fire authorities as well, they said, yeah, they start to get a lot of calls around this time about involving firework complaints, and they try to respond to them as best they can, but the volume really starts to increase as we approach the holiday, and so they really just can't get to everything. So it depends on which agency is responding. Smaller agencies, smaller areas, they may have an easier time going to each call. But larger areas, like for instance, we spoke to Unified Police. They said, look, when we get a firework complaint, it's basically like an attempt to locate call. Officers keep an eye out, but we're not necessarily sending anyone right there because they're dealing with other calls at the moment. Brian?
You can imagine it's rather difficult too, kind of like a needle in a haystack, especially when you're out in a populated area, home after home after home after home. People are out, they're recreating, they're enjoying the warmer temperatures later at night. So I definitely don't envy that. However, Lincoln, it's interesting because you've done a number of stories on fire conditions and kind of where things are right now. There's always that debate this time of year. Does it really make sense to allow to set off fireworks? Obviously, that is going to continue this year. But having talked to a number of local fire agencies, both on the local, state, federal level, what are they saying about fireworks when it comes to the threat for wildfire this year?
You know, obviously we had a enormously wet winter. We had kind of a cool, wet spring, and things are greener later this year. So, you know, maybe that does signal to people there's less of a threat. But you already mentioned that Draper fire today. Things can still easily burn. So police and fire officials, they're saying, yeah, maybe the danger isn't as great as in past years. Maybe it is not as dry, but things can still easily burn. You know, we're approaching temperatures, I believe, in the triple digits in the coming days here around the 4th of July. And that's going to dry things out quickly. So they said, don't let your guard down. It may have been a wet time that we went through, but things can still easily burn, Brian.
Some good information as always, Lincoln. Thank you for being on the program. Thanks for joining us tonight. We want to hear from you at home, of course, which describes your feelings towards July 4th fireworks shows or Independence Day fireworks shows. Well, if you'd like to weigh in, scan the QR code on your screen. Most of you saying, I'm going to hit the hay early this year. Well, I get it, but the interesting part about that is you're going to go to bed early. There may be people around you just setting those things off, I think, until the legal time is, what, midnight, if I remember correctly, for July 4th. I know the timing changes each day. Some of you saying, I'll watch from afar. So this is the time of year, Chase, where there's genuine concern. Right now, San Juan, Grand County's under a red flag warning. Here's a live look at Main Street, Main Drag, Moab right now. Fire danger is relatively high in this area due to some warmer temperatures, of course, low humidity, strong winds, all of that combining to be conditions that really are ripe if a spark were to occur.
That's right.
So there is a genuine concern. I am pretty close with a couple of folks who do live in that area and work in the world of wildfire, work in the fire service. They've actually been pretty busy. A lot of fires have been very small. Folks in Moab just putting out early this week, the Moab Valley Fire District saying, hey, be really mindful of your vehicles. They're getting a lot of those dragging chains right now, and conditions are really dry. They have responded to fires. They've been able to keep them very small, which is a great thing.
Going to be a lot of grass fires. You know, the high elevation snow melt kind of continues, especially here in northern Utah. But below 7,500 feet, the lower elevations of southeastern Utah, that's where we have extreme fire danger, including those fire weather warnings. This will continue for at least one more day. I think maybe by Friday, the winds will calm down, so that's some good news. However, the temperatures, though, as we head into the weekend, they really start to climb. We're talking maybe getting close to 100 degrees for the first time here in Salt Lake City. So the summer heat, it's coming, and with the heat, everything's going to be drying things out. So please be smart, be safe for the holiday weekend.
Always a reminder to do your part with whatever you can, whether that be maintaining your vehicles, using fireworks where appropriate, when appropriate, and of course everything else that goes along with it. If you're going camping, you want to snuff that campfire out. If you're going to do these things, got to take those precautions.
People know this, but we still get fires.
Every single
you just
year.
gotta think about it.
The majority is always human caused too. I mean, sure, a nice lightning storm can roll through. Things can kind of hold in pockets, and these holdover fires can start. But that would likely be at higher elevation right now. Fortunately, we are still pretty soggy in some of those spots.
Which is good. But again, the foothills, they're already starting to dry out, and you're probably noticing that green going to brown, which typically happens maybe in mid-June, and now we're kind of going to see it here in early July. So let's get right to that forecast. I mentioned the hot weather. Right now, the really hot weather, there's a heat dome going on across the southern plains. We've been talking about Texas seeing triple-digit heat. That just continues for the remainder of the week. And some of that heat is spilling into the Four Corners, but generally the really hot stuff is staying south and east of Utah. And that's where you're seeing temperatures 104 Midland, 99 in Oklahoma City and Houston, 92 in Memphis. It's also humid, so your heat indices is well over 100 degrees. Eventually, though, some of that heat is going to be moving into Utah. Today, though, we've had some cloud cover. We've had some isolated showers and thunderstorms. They've been kind of bubbling up over the mountains, especially out in Tooele County. That's where we've had some of the heaviest rainfall. And then as they begin to roll off, they kind of just fall apart. So when it comes to valley rainfall, we're not really seeing a whole lot of that. Some light showers over the Uintas into southwestern Wyoming, and a few storms now just north of Tree Mountain. If they hold together, they're going to try to roll into Cache Valley, but a lot of these storms, again, have a history of falling apart. So here's the slow-moving storm system that's been producing some of these stray thunderstorms. This will continue for another 24, maybe 36 hours as the storm rolls into northern Utah, and tomorrow might be our best chance to see a shower storm. Here we are by 8 o'clock this evening. Again, a few storms just to our west, very isolated. Tomorrow morning we'll have some cloud cover in northern Utah, clear skies towards the southeast, but this is the area that could see more of these pop-up thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon, keeping those temperatures somewhat cool. It's cool for this time of year, so it's below average. Southwestern Wyoming could see some thunderstorms as well. So here we go. This is our best chance in the afternoon, but those rain chances are still low at about 20% here in the valleys. Upper 70s and low 80s for daytime highs in northern and central Utah, with 90s to our south. And then it gets hotter, as I mentioned, as we head into the weekend. Ridge of high pressure really expands and builds, and we're tracking some heat, and this will likely be the hottest weather of the year and potentially our first 100-degree temperature in Salt Lake by Monday. 4th of July, 98 degrees. I think we're going to have a little bit more wind moving in early next week, so that might be a problem with fireworks. So again, think about it. Be smart. 97 in St. George tomorrow, 100 on Friday, and then it just continues to climb. 108 Sunday, 109 on Monday. 4th of July, 105, hot and dry in southern Utah. Sunny skies. Salt Lake, we have those stray thunderstorms tomorrow, 83, 87 on Friday. Again, 90s through the weekend. Overnight temperatures have been pretty comfortable in the 60s. It's about to get a bit warmer next week. Overnight lows not really cooling off very much into the low 70s. So if you want some free AC, open up those windows. That's not really in the cards for early next week.
Yeah, not when you see this here, too. What changed in the last day here to bump up these numbers?
Just looks like the ridge of high pressure that's out to our west is going to be moving in. Looks just a little bit stronger, so we up those temperatures, upper 90s and close to 100. It'll be really close. We'll see if this happens, but Monday's our best chance. And the wind out of the south will help boost that temperature.
The confidence meter, what's it looking like on that one?
Oh, I'm always confident.
I know.
Brian.
Sometimes it's
so
nice
it's high.
So you're feeling pretty good about this
I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Cool. As always.
I also won't be working on that day.
Oh, so there you go.
To be honest.
So who knows, right?
Sterling can deal with that one. No.
Thanks for joining us for 2 News Live. We will be back with you tomorrow as well, every day, Monday through Friday, 5:30. Chase Thomason, Brian Schnee, our whole crew here at 2 News Live and KUTV 2 News. We appreciate you being with us. Have a great rest of your night. We will see you back here tomorrow. Take care.